Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa College. Welcome to Culture by Neurodesign. Last week's podcast episode, and that was episode 56, was about my experiences of flying through Schiphol Airport, Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, with my autistic son. Now, I have to be honest, this was not something that I was looking forward to. We all know that flying is pretty stressful. It's stressful for everybody, but it's especially stressful for someone like my son who really places such a high value, who really needs the known, who needs predictability. So for someone like him, flying is hugely confrontational. So as I say, it wasn't something that I was looking forward to, but the experience was doable because of some really quite remarkable support that was offered by Schiphol Airport, also by Leeds Bradford Airport for the return journey, and by KLM Airline. And it really brought to life for me how thoughtful design choices can make something that's hard just about doable, and how really small differences can make an enormous impact, an enormous positive impact on people who would otherwise struggle. Now, when I published this episode, I shared a reflection on LinkedIn, and I've been blown away genuinely by the response. There have been lots of comments, and people have very generously shared their own experiences, their own insights. And one thing that struck me was some of the consistency of the themes coming out of the comments. So people were saying things like, it wasn't perfect, but it worked. There's progress over perfection, and that's the power of neuro-inclusive design. And you get the outcome that you design for, whether it's an airport or a workplace. So what I decided to do is, in this episode today, and the next episode as well, I want to pull together some of those themes that emerged from the comments that people were kind enough to place on my post. And I want to talk about the importance of those themes to the work that I do in designing neuro-inspired cultures, which are largely ready for neurodivergent people and enable neurodivergent people, and which also offer a nicer and much more engaging working environment for everyone else, and lead to improved outcomes for the team. So the first big theme that I'm going to pull out and focus on today is the theme of progress over perfection. And one comment that I made in my LinkedIn post was that 40% done is infinitely better than 0% done with a perfect plan in a PowerPoint deck. And that comment really struck a chord with a lot of people. Now, to be honest, I question whether we could ever actually reach 100% perfect for a culture initiative. But even if you ever do reach close to 100% perfect, you're not done with your culture initiative. You're just moving into maintenance mode. Just like in product development. In product development, we'll shift from development into product maintenance, and then we'll be focusing more on updates and patches and maybe code rewrites, things like that. Inclusion needs the same kind of maintenance once the big transformation is completed. Inclusion has to stay relevant because things change around it. There could be change in the environment that we work in, which is out of our control, and the disruption and the different policies and the different expectations of our talent or whatever it may be that we experience. It could be a change within an organization in terms of the strategic goals changing, for example, or a significant acquisition which is made. Or it could be changes much more locally within our team, changes in team composition. There's a few ways in which change can be experienced, but it means that for a culture initiative, we always need to keep an eye on it and go into maintenance mode even when the transformation is done. And that's why the Future Ready team pathway that I've developed, which embeds neuro-inclusion into a change management pathway, is built on an iterative progress and not a one-off transformation that we then say is done and we never think about again. So for me, this kind of transformation is synonymous with an agile mindset. I can't think about them separately. So I'm not talking about agile process. I'm not talking about rigidly applying Scrum or a Kanban process. I'm talking about an agile mindset in quite a different way than the process. So an agile mindset is a particular way of thinking, a particular way of approaching something that you want to achieve. It's a way that enables people with different neurostyles, different ways of engaging with information. And it's also a way that de-risks change, whether that's local change within our team or a big organization-wide initiative like cultural change. So what do I mean by an agile mindset? First of all, I mean we need to set a vision. We need to be crystal clear about where we're going. What does it look like? What will it feel like when we get there? But it's also about accepting that there's more than one way to reach that vision. Now, whether you have succeeded in delivering that vision is going to be evaluated on whether you get there. It's not going to be evaluated based on how you get there. So sure, you might do a retrospective for learning purposes and to see whether next time there's things that you could do which might get you there more quickly or more smoothly or whatever. But really your success is defined by what you deliver and not how you deliver it. So that distinction between the two is one really important piece of an agile mindset for me. The second important piece is that once you've set that vision, start. You need to get going. And that's often the most difficult thing for people, but that is also part of an agile mindset. And how do we get going? Well, that huge change that we've just described in setting the vision, we need to break it down into small little chunks, into small steps which we can deliver within a relatively short time. Each of those steps on its own is low risk, and each of those steps should deliver value, small units of value, so that people involved can also see the process and stay engaged and stay motivated and keep on going for this longer term process that you want to deliver. The final element of an agile mindset, which I'll highlight today, is the importance of learning from what doesn't go to plan. Something doesn't work, okay, it's not a nice feeling. Everybody always wants things to work. But if something doesn't work, what's really critical with an agile mindset is that we learn from it. We just say, okay, what was it that made this not work? Or has it actually worked, but just not exactly in the way that we wanted it to work? Would this actually do? Would this be fine? So the agile mindset is always about revisiting and learning from what doesn't go to plan. Find a different way forwards if you need to, but keep moving. So that kind of approach, that kind of mindset is how cultural change can become real. We make sure that we are working on visible, consistent micro changes that evolve as a team evolves, and eventually that get embedded in a framework that's able to sustain those changes, even if the individuals who started to make those changes stop or leave or take their eye off the ball for a few months. So what does this feel like in a team? Well, clarity of vision, the first step, feels wonderful when you're working in a team. It's fantastic to have clarity of vision, and clarity of what the first step is to help you get on your way to the vision. That also feels fantastic. I think we all know that. Nobody would question that. But that combined with the freedom to decide how you can contribute to that vision, that feels very respectful to your neuro style, to your preferred way of working. That feels like a healthy way of working, because I don't need to burn energy trying to fit into a style that's actually yours but doesn't make much sense to me, or that's just really, really hard for me to work in. I can work in my own style. It feels like I'm trusted to decide whether I want to find out what people think by talking to them or by doing a survey, or a bit of both. It feels like I'm trusted to decide how to communicate insights from data and not told that this way is the only way. It feels like I'm trusted to still deliver on time and to the proper level of quality, even though I might need to take a break in the middle of the day today to go to a meeting at my kid's school. It feels amazing to be led by this kind of leader. How you do things matters a lot to individual people, to the people actually doing the work. It can make a big difference to their energy levels, to their ability to switch off in the evenings, to how much energy they have to actually focus on the work and not to just survive in a system which doesn't make sense to them. So how you do things matters a lot to individuals, but it doesn't really matter to a leader. It can feel uncomfortable to a leader to release control of how you do things. But controlling how people do things is the old way of leading. Many of us have learned that by emulating other leaders, and it did used to work when everything stayed the same, right? When people weren't so open about their different cognitive styles, when the world wasn't changing so quickly. But that's not our world now. And that's why the old style of leading, of telling people how to do things, that doesn't work. That's not anymore how you become the best leader that you can be. These days, being a good leader is about setting a vision and getting out of people's way so that they can get on with it. Whether or not you understand their style, whether or not their style is the way that you would do it or not, whether you would label that style an autistic style or an ADHD style, it really doesn't matter. Let people get on with it once you've told them clearly what it is that you want them to do. And you need to free up your time and your focus to be doing other things as the leader. So I'm coming to the end of my reflection for this podcast episode. As I said at the beginning, there was a lot of interest and support that I saw in the responses to that post about my experiences of traveling through Schiphol, for just getting started, for just doing something, for some progress being better than no progress. Now, I know this sounds obvious. It sounds obvious when somebody tells it to you, but I know how many projects are out there that have delivered zero benefit, even though there's a perfect plan in a beautiful PowerPoint deck. So somewhere the obvious message, or what may feel like an obvious message that I'm giving you, isn't always being reflected in the work that we want to or are able to do. Aiming for perfection or trying to be perfect doesn't change culture. We have to accept that culture is shaped by people. People are messy. Cultural transformation is, by its nature, a bit messy. It's not going to go in a straight line. It's going to be made up of lots of steps that gradually get us closer to our goal. And sometimes we might need to go back and retrace our steps a little bit in order to find a different way to go forwards again. And that's exactly what my son and I experienced on that recent flight that I talked about in the last episode. Our experience wasn't perfect, definitely not. There are definitely ways that it could be better. But even that imperfect experience was absolutely transformative for us. The difference was immense, right? There was a clear goal. Everyone should be able to fly. And there's a premise that in order to do that, some people need assistance. And we, the airport and the airline, will work with people to understand what they need and to provide it to the extent that we are enabled with the constraints that we work in. What does that assistance look like? It's not prescribed. They left it to the experts, who in this situation are me, my son, and the people who we met while traveling, who knew what was possible at the point that we were at. They left it to us to figure it out. It was a very human approach to inclusion. And as I say, it wasn't perfect, but it was transformative for us. It made a huge difference. And I really encourage you to start thinking in this way when you think about your own team culture, your own organizational culture. Define what you want it to feel like, define what you want it to be able to deliver, and get started. Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress, because there is huge value in every bit of progress that you make, even though you're not yet where you want to go. Next week, I'm planning to look at another theme that also emerged through the responses to my post, and that theme is about freedom within a framework. It may feel contradictory, but it's about how the combination of structure with autonomy can together help to create a culture of neuro-inclusion. And I've also decided to reflect the great response that I've received in a free presentation to mark International Day of People with Disabilities, which is on the 3rd of December every year. So I'm still working on that presentation. You can't sign up for it yet, but if you'd like to be the first to know more about what I'll be covering, and if you'd like to be the first to be invited to register for that presentation, then please sign up for my newsletter. It's called the Neuro-Inspired Question, and you can sign up for it at www.lisacollegeconsulting.com/let's-connect. I'll also put the URL in the notes that are associated with this episode. Thanks so much for listening. you.